Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining Comm Collective's panel on Making Your Mark Through Designers Showhouses. My name is Lucy Bamman, and I'm thrilled to be chatting with the talented Billy Ceglia, Tiffany Cobb of Tiffany Rene Interiors, and Courtney McLeod. I work as a freelance magazine editor and stylist, and following several years at Veranda, Elle Decor, House Beautiful, and Milieu Magazine. And these days I write stories and produce pages for a handful of design magazines and style um, interiors for decorators eager to create content and kind of pitch that perfectly shot room project to on-staff design editors. So I say all of that because I've been in the world for a while and have attended many show houses over the years. And I love the way that by simply stepping into a designer show house, whether it be New York's famed Kips Bay or the awesome Aspire show houses or one of the super smart houses that House Beautiful magazine is producing these days. I love the way that one is kind of instantly transported into the minds and the creative souls of these interior decorators who've worked, painstakingly at creating the rooms that they have been assigned for the attendance. Today, Billy, Tiffany, and Courtney are going to chat with me about their personal experiences participating in some of the top show houses around the country. And so I hope you all enjoy the chat and learn a bit, and feel free to type any questions that you have into the Q&A, and we'll get to those at the end. First, let's have each of these designers give their little spiel, introducing themselves before we dive in. Courtney, why don't you begin by telling us about you and your business, as well as the show houses that you have participated in the past?
Sure. Thanks, Lucy. My name is Courtney McLeod. I'm the principal of Right Meets Left Interior Design based in New York City. We've been in business for 8 years and focus largely on residential projects in the New York City area and around the country. I've actually completed 4 show houses in 2 years, so I'm a little bit of a glutton for punishment, but a huge advocate for the power of show houses to really create opportunity. So excited to be here.
Thank you. And then Tiffany, why don't you go ahead? Ladies first.
Sure. I am Tiffany of Tiffany Rene Interior Design, Atlanta and Detroit-based interior design firm. I have been in business for the most part since 2014, and I do residential and light commercial design. I have been in 3 show houses in the past 2 years, 2 of which have been in my hometown of Detroit. And another one that was very exciting more recently was a virtual show house. So a lot less legwork, but still the same type of intensity nonetheless. So thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
We'll definitely want to hear about that virtual experience. So, okay. And last but certainly not least, Billy. Bill?
I am Billy Ceglia, a Connecticut-based interior designer. We do residential projects all around the country. I've been in business since 1999, so 21 years, and I win the award because I have done, that I can remember, 13 show houses. And the thing is, I will never tally up all of the money that I have spent on them because I probably have a palace in Dubai somewhere.
Right. We're going to also. So I guess I'm not going to ask any one of these questions directly to anyone. If you feel inspired, chime in, or each of you can have a turn answering however you all want to go about it. But briefly, can each of you actually explain to our listeners and viewers what made you begin to want to participate in a show house? Maybe it was the invitation, or maybe it was a marketing decision, or something you've always dreamed about. I know, Billy, I like to ask all the panelists that I ever chat with, what did you want to be when you were younger? Because I think it's so interesting to kind of share with everyone what you wanted to be and then how you end up where you are. And you said that you originally had wanted to be a chef because it was the only real creative profession that you knew about. But the moment that you walked into a show house, I think you said you were 9 years old, that your plan, maybe even for life, pivoted. So maybe you start and tell us kind of about that and about, how you decide to participate in a show house.
So yes, that is the story. When I was 9 years old, I was dragged just to see a house. Nobody understood what it was. My grandmother said, I'm going to take you to this house because when we were kids, we would all go ice skate on the lagoon outside this house, and the butler would come outside with hot chocolate. That was the reason for going to this house that was just open to the public. And again, I didn't know that interior design was a profession. And we walked into this house and I was like, what is this? And someone explained it to me. And I was like, oh, well, this is what I'm going to do with my life.
Right.
And then, fast forward to when I started my business in '99, the same producers of that show house that I had gone to asked me to participate in a show house.
How cool is that?
So I said, yeah. And I was very young. I was 23 or 22, fresh out of the finishing school of Ralph Lauren. I didn't have a portfolio besides the work that I had done at Ralph Lauren. So it seemed like a great opportunity to, start building your image bank and getting your name out there.
Totally.
And really sort of the reason for me doing the first one. A little bit of the romance of saying that I did a show house, but it really was for exposure and photographs.
Tiffany and Courtney, how about you all? What was that first one like? What was the decision like to participate in the beginning, and how did it kind of come across your plate?
Well, similar to Billy, I grew up in a neighborhood in Detroit that once was filled with General Motors executives in historic 1920s homes. So when my family and I lived in that neighborhood in the 1980s, those homes were being renovated. And I was just this kid, like finding something different to do, and would go into the houses, and they weren't actual show houses. They were just open houses. But
Okay.
I would go, they would let us in and we walk around and check them out. And then I would go home and like fold down pages of magazines, like envisioning what it would be like to live in one of those homes, because I lived in a very small apartment up the street from these beautiful homes.
Okay.
So when the opportunity presented itself in my hometown, just a few streets up from the streets that I grew up on, where there was going to be the first Junior League of Detroit designer show house in the city I grew up in the same neighborhood, it was super exciting for me to just like jump at that opportunity. Prior to that, though, in between my childhood and my collegiate career, I worked in logistics for a design installation company. And so I would be there with designers while they're installing these show houses. So inevitably, I knew that one day that would be my fate, but I never knew that my first one would be in my beloved hometown. So certainly was a full circle moment for me. And at that time, that was all that mattered.
Right. Very, I would say, coming in with the knowledge that you had about install days and all of that, I can't say for certain that I would ever.
Right. That should have been my cautionary tale, right?
How about you?
Courtney.
Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. I think I came to show houses a little bit later. Kips Bay in New York was really the first one that I went to. I worked in finance for many years before embarking on a career in design. And, I was design obsessed. And so I would go, to Kips Bay every year and dream and learn and just be dazzled. And in 2018, I reached a point in my design career where I felt like I was ready to do something that I could really clearly and perfectly express my own design point of view and aesthetic, and really, just go for it with no restrictions. I hadn't had that opportunity before. I said, budget, who cares? I know about that one. And it was the first time I got to do something that was just such a clear distillation of my personal style and just point of view. Aspire magazine, I'd had a relationship with them for many years, and they approached me about doing it. And it was actually the Detroit show house, and where I met Tiffany, which was like really, really awesome. An unexpected thing from working on show houses is meeting fantastic designers and making new friends around the country. And it was also an opportunity. It was a renovation. So I had also never done a renovation long distance before. And so I thought, well, let me make all those mistakes without a client so that, if the opportunity presents itself, I can say, yeah, I know how to do that. And it was a very hard experience, but a really rewarding one. And it created so many opportunities, opened so many doors, and I'm really grateful to have been a part of it.
So thank you all for sharing that. And I would wonder, are those, and Billy, maybe because you were so young, that's not, the answer might be different for you than from Tiffany and Courtney, but were those first show houses kind of game changer moments in your business? Did you see incremental growth in client outreach and that sort of thing, potential clients reaching out to you following the show houses? Did it work? Did you get, or even why was that, that may not have been why you did it, but did you see after those first show houses more attention towards your business? Anybody?
Oh, yeah, I definitely did. I'm grateful that I went in with the mindset that there is no guarantees that you're going to walk out with the clients, but it does, to Courtney's point, allow for you to really flex your design muscle and show what your aesthetic is more aligned with. And so I was grateful to have been able to do that, but definitely fortunate to get a lot of exposure and clients to, call me.
Mm-hmm.
I think that through the years, I've had several projects where I, made money off of them and I thought they were great projects, but maybe there were just a few elements of the design that I didn't want to invest in the photography for it, to be perfectly honest, or maybe the client didn't fully complete the space. And so when you're trying to build your business, you really need to rely on your photography along with word of mouth. So the exposure that show houses bring, in addition to the professional photography, was definitely a value to me in my business. And I saw a significant growth at that time.
That's great.
Yeah, I did as well. The photography was so important. And I actually, in addition to the magazine's photography, I had my own photographer come and shoot it as well, which I'd highly recommend anyone doing. And it ended up in print many, many times over. It ended up all over the web. It was really popular, and I got really lucky. I actually got 2 clients from the show house. Like, they had visited the show house and liked the work, and it led to long-term great relationships. So it was direct and indirect benefits.
Cool. Well, Billy, having done 13 or 14, I can't remember the exact number you said, what was the game changer for you, the game changer show house?
Definitely doing Kips Bay was the game changer for me. I mean, I've got, for all the other show houses, I always got recognition from them.
Mm-hmm.
Out of all the 13 show houses, I've only gotten 2 clients out of them. So I wouldn't say that you should go into a show house thinking you're getting work off of it, but it did sort of establish me as, a designer with a certain aesthetic, a certain personality. My very first show house, I would go places and people would be like, oh my God, I literally remember going to buy socks. And the guy was like, you're the one that did the blue room. And then Bay, because Kips Bay, you have to be there. You have to be there every day while the show is open. So I was like living in Palm Beach, and I would go up and down Worth Avenue and do my business and whatever. And I was literally, they called me Kips Bay Billy. So you get a very strong recognition, for better or for worse, for what you do at a show house. So you always sort of have to really do pull out the stops and make it that you want to be recognized for.
Right.
Because you don't want to be Billy that did the bad room.
No, I mean, I can think right now, I think of several, Sasha Bicop, we're never going to not think of that really big, bold stairwell that she did at Kips Bay 2 years ago. There's I love the Alessandra Branca room from Kips Bay this past year in Palm Beach with the blue and white room, or there's tons. Peter Dunham's room from Kips Bay this year with those blue chunky kind of wallpaper was so cool. I think there's definitely Peter Penoyer and Alice Engel, his design, right-hand gal, did this beautiful blue and gray and yellow room at Kips Bay that I obsess over and want to live in. I think that they definitely I look at interiors all day, every day from 100 different decorators. And I think that they definitely are. There's something special about kind of the idea that these are the rooms that you don't have a client for, that you just wanted to create on your own. So beyond that, I think we've kind of answered this a bit, but can you all speak to how you use show houses to build your brand identity and awareness? The marketing piece is obvious, but how do you decide when there's so much out there as far as fabrics and, furniture, and how do you decide what the identity is and what the look of the room is going to be when you commit? I think from my understanding, you usually get assigned the room that you by the the boss or whoever it is, the president of the show house committee, or but once you get that room, how do you decide the angle?
Well, for the first show house, I had seen a wallpaper at the ICFF furniture fair in New York, maybe a year, maybe 2 years even before, and it was a new launch by a small brand called Ozabri, and I obsessed over it for so long, and and I just cold emailed Karen, the proprietor, and I said, I'm doing this little room. Would you help a sister out? Like literally. And it was, she was so generous. And once I got that wallpaper, that was the start to everything. But I also think it was helpful because it sort of loosened me up to kind of reach out to people I didn't necessarily know as well for help. I think over the years, it's been so instrumental in helping to build relationships with brands. And, those relationships have led to all sorts of different kinds of opportunities. So, the brand building, it's not just my own company, but it's also, association with brands as well.
You're kind of putting on display, they're trusting you to put on display their work in the best possible light. So it's a great building relationship for both you and the company that you're working with. What about Tiffany and Billy?
So for my first show house, again, it was in my hometown. And I believe that I led with intention. I knew that I wanted to have strong representation of Detroit artisans. And so I wanted to make sure that, I prioritized that. And one of the first relationships that I established at that time was with the Detroit Wallpaper Company. And they were so generous to me and just game to support me in any way possible. And we did this really cool wall covering that looked like owl feathers when you glanced at it, which had like a dual meaning to it because there was like this migration of winter snow owls in the city of Detroit that year. So, so it was just like layers of intention. And then I also used Regina Andrew throughout the space. And the highlight of the space that I designed was these glass blown lights that I had strung throughout the hallway. So like Billy said, you know, people be like, oh, you're the one that did this, that. They're like, oh, you're the one with the lights. You're the one that did the hallway with the lights, you know? So to answer your question, I think that these show houses, if you haven't already established your point of view and you do end up doing multiple show houses, it has helped me to really hone in on my point of view. Because whereas before, maybe my aesthetic was just like, hey, I'm going to design a functional space for clients and it's going to be fashionable, but it doesn't necessarily have my thing, you know. But then the show houses start to help me see like, what exactly is your thing? And through that process of things changing and the intensity of it, you start to realize like, oh, okay, this is my thing. so that is how it's been helpful for me. But that was how I established what my launching pad would be for the first one, and then on after.
Cool. Billy?
Oh, it's a lot of different things. I mean, first and foremost, after doing so many of them, is that you wise up and you do sort of roll with what you can get discounted or for free.
Gotcha.
Because, you know, that's a lot of, or just flat out what you can get. Because, you know, show houses have a very tight turnaround. Maybe on the best possible day, it's 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
You're not getting something from some major manufacturer exactly what you want. So you can call them and be like, oh, hey, what do you have? We have a pink sofa. Great. We're starting with a pink sofa. But I always try to, even though there is no client, develop like a fake ideal client.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why people respond so well to my show house rooms, is because they walk in and they go, it's like someone lives here. And
Right.
it's because I'm neurotic. Through the lists, and when you open the drawers, there are pencils and notepads and chewing gum. I want the people that come to the show house, whether they're looking to hire a designer or not, to have the most exciting experience.
Mm-hmm.
And they might be able to take back to wherever they live. And, you know, maybe they can't afford a designer, but they're like, do you remember how the pencils were all like in the drawer in the cup? And, you know, I want everyone to have a little bit of joy sparked when they come in.
Yeah, I think that's so kind of you, Billy.
And it's like the room that you get, you have to realize that the room is the room. You know, for Kips Bay, you were saying like they give you the room. They gave us the floor plans for Kips Bay, and I remember looking and saying, oh, God help the person that gets this sad space. And I remember walking through the house with my little folder looking for room number 10, saying, where is room number 10? Where is room number 10? And I was with my friend Danielle. She goes, it's the hallway. I'm like, oh. But and I said, okay, well, I have a hallway. I'm making it into a lovely family hallway. I didn't get the living room. I'm not putting up Fortuny curtains and Degournay wallpaper. And I just rolled with it. And, you know, it was, I don't know, I think it's one of the, it's like in the top 5 most Instagrammed Kips Bay spaces. So it resonates.
Yeah.
And funny enough, so the first show house that I didn't, they didn't assign me that space. I picked a hallway.
You did?
I went in there and, you know, I guess being in Atlanta, my understanding was that if it's your first show house, you'd be lucky to get a powder room. So I went in with the mentality that, you know, it's expensive. I just want a small space. And I saw this hallway and they honestly looked at me like, you want to design this space? And I'm like, yeah, I do. Yeah. And it was a great opportunity to show people like what I could do with a space that didn't have any cool architectural details. And, you know, it really commanded a lot of attention. So it's probably one of my most proud transformations to date. So, you know, now it seems like after that show house, it was like, oh, this hallway is an option. This hallway is not, you know, and I'm like, that's interesting. So I really, you know, I think you know, if you get a hallway, you got to rock it, you know?
Let's go ahead and cross off the list the one gripe about, well, there's the installation process and there's the short lead times and all that, but really the hurdle for so many people is the financial, I guess, the amount of money that you have to commit to doing a show house. I think for many designers, it can be prohibitive, but I would love to know, when in your career do you decide it's the right time to make that decision and to go forward? And then how do you do it? What are some tricks and tips, Billy, like you were saying, what do they have that's ready? But then from a financial standpoint, is there any kind of nuance to making it work? And it's not design on a dime always, but how do you make it fit? How do you make it work for your business?
Oh, am I going to go first?
Sure.
I'll go first. It's tough because you get into it and you get sucked in, and it's your name on the line. So if you need something, you'll write the check. I mean, you can ask me what I spent on Kips Bay, you'd probably fall on the floor and die.
I would never.
You make it work. I mean, I've done also doing a local show house is easier because all of your resources are there. It's easier to say, hey, painter, I need a favor. When you're doing them remotely, it's a bigger problem. I've done local show houses where, we painted, wallpapered, bing, bang, boom. I went to my parents' house with a moving truck and moved their entire living room out without telling them and set that up as the show house.
Yeah, there you go.
And all my furniture. And I just laughed. I said, it'll be back in 6 weeks. Don't worry about it. You'll get some free artwork. But you make it work. I go for the lungs. That's just my personality with anything. I'm sure there's ways that you can borrow and steal, but I'd rather know going into it, this is what we've got to work with, and this is what I need. And I know this is what it's going to turn out to look like.
Right. And I guess you're able to kind of promise, because of the nature of show houses, you're able to promise exposure, and everything is so credited. So that's good.
Back in the day, I started them. There was I don't even know that we had cell phones when I did my first show house. Social media and the desire for brands to put their name out there is very, very, very new. When I was doing those other shows, people were like, I don't care.
Right. What about you, Tiffany and Courtney?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was a time that was very intentional. I had reached that point where I wanted to go to the next level or the next stage. Mm-hmm. And, that year was, when I worked with PR for the first time. I, had a book of a portfolio of projects that I was proud of, that I was ready to put out there. And I viewed this as part of that strategy of just sort of getting to the next stage in my progression as a designer, but also for my company. And so, kind of like what Billy was saying, I really kind of threw everything at it. But, a lot of the money I spent, I did it either knowing this, I'm actually designing this for myself. In fact, my sofa right now is the sofa I designed for my first show house, and I still love it to death. And I designed it for the show house, but I designed it for myself. So it was things like that where, yes, I spent money, but I kind of had a little bit of a plan as well. Yeah. But subsequently, after spending a lot on that first one, thank goodness it paid off. But I was like, I can never do that again. Yeah. And so, my whole perspective on it has been more, what can I get? And let me sort of make that work. And so you can spend a lot on a show house, or you can spend very little. I just did a show house over the fall, and spent $2,000 or $3,000 to do the whole thing, all logistics and everything included. So, it can range by a lot.
Mm.
And for me, my first show house, remember, I did select a space that was smaller, thinking that was going to be a lot. less costly, but it doesn't matter.
Oh,
They start getting up there. But as you've asked that question, in my head, I was thinking I made it through a wing and a prayer, honestly. Like, I put it out there that I was going to do it. And then everything just started aligning for me. Different vendors were super supportive. It was like our first time ever working together, and they were down. And I don't know if it was just my energy or just my story, or I don't know, but it all lined up. And where there were instances where I had to pay for things, we were fortunate enough to design a show house where a homeowner was moving in. And so normally it's the other way around, but in this case, he was able to purchase a number of items throughout the house, and he purchased a significant number of mine. So I feel like I broke even that year. So in addition to getting clients, so that, I can't share that story as like the ideal scenario for most show houses, but in that instance, it was really great for me.
so what advice do you all have for those looking to participate in show houses? Um, I guess as far as a brand strategy, is there any advice on how to go about getting picked to be in one, or how have you all been so lucky? I mean, there's the sheer talent behind it, obviously, but what is the actually, Courtney, I'll ask you, that was an intentional decision that you made when you started that year. You thought, okay, well, I'm at the point now. How did you nail it? How did you get in,
Yeah, I had a relationship with Aspire, and they were really kind of the first folks that gave me a shot in the industry at all. They supported me very early on, and so they were sponsoring the Detroit Show House, and they reached out to me, and the opportunity sort of presented itself, and it was, in Detroit, which I'd never worked, I'd actually never, I don't think I'd even been to Detroit at that point. But I knew that there was so much potential there. I knew what I wanted to do, not from a design perspective yet, but I knew what I wanted to accomplish with it. And so for me, it was just saying yes, which I guess not everyone has quite that experience, but I did a good job on that one. And then that led to calls for many other show houses. So that's kind of how it happened with me.
Cool. What about you, Billy?
The first show house that I did, and pretty much 11 of the 13 subsequent ones, was from the producers of that very first show house I went to when I was 9. So as I sort of aged and decided that I was going to be an interior designer, I actually started volunteering for them. And then when I started my business, they were like, "You're doing a room." Kips Bay is the biggest mystery. I mean, they've opened it up now so that it's like an obvious way to apply, but our little year in Palm Beach has like 400 stories as to how everybody got picked. Nobody really knows. It's like an urban legend. But listen, ask, apply, show up at a show house, meet the people that introduce yourself, and stay in contact. You never know. You might say like, well, I'll never get into Kips Bay because X, Y, and Z. But people drop out of show houses at the 11th hour.
Yeah.
And they can phone and be like, "Oh, hey, you want to do a room?" And you never know, just because you're always active and involved.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. What about you, Tiffany?
Yeah, I guess I'll piggyback off of that and just say, you just have to put the ask out there. You really don't know. I mean, I think on the outside looking in, oftentimes you hear there's a lot of politics involved. But I really think also that when you're just out here doing the work and being visible, just, as people do start reaching out to you, you're positioning yourself for things like that to happen. Prime example is with me recently doing the iconic home with the Architectural Digest and Black Interior Designers Network collaboration. And Kia McSwain reached out to me, ironically, while I was installing the other a physical show house, and mentioned this opportunity that I just didn't want to pass up, and I was honored that she thought of me to do it. And it was a challenge to balance the two, even though it's virtual. It's less legwork, but it's still just as intentional. And I'm grateful that she did reach out, and it has been very well received. So
Awesome.
just ask and be as visible as you can, and just do the work, and everything else will align.
What do you all actually, Courtney and Tiffany, I want to briefly hear about that virtual show house. Courtney, you did one with First Dibs, and Tiffany, you did the AD Iconic Home that you were just talking about. Tell us how that worked, and because that could very well be our future. What was that like? What was the process? How did the viewers see them? Tell us a little bit about.
Yeah, it was really cool. I did the first inaugural First Dibs virtual show house, and it was basically iconic rooms reimagined. And so they had 10 designers. We each picked a room and then redesigned it. And so I picked an iconic Dorothy Draper space at the Greenbrier Hotel. But it was kind of one of those things where I think someone else may have dropped out, because they contacted me, I think it was less than a week before it was going live. And I sort of jumped at the chance. It was me alongside some of the top designers in the industry. So, the association, I was pretty happy with that. And, again, it's sort of that relationship. First Dibs was just so over the moon with what we did. And that's led to an ongoing relationship there. And so it was a lot of work, like surprising amount of work, considering it was just virtual. But it was also kind of cool, because then you really have no restrictions at all. I kind of went on First Dibs and picked everything I had, dreamt about that had a huge price tag that I'd never had a chance to use. And I got to, design with it. So it was even more of a dream than, a physical show house. And, it has more longevity in a way too. Sort of the digital life is there as well. So I'm a huge advocate for the show house. I think it's such a great opportunity, especially also for newer designers to be able to, again, like show what they can do, even if they don't have the client yet or the budget yet. It's like, I have the potential, I just need the opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's so important.
Mhm.
Tiffany, will you tell us kind of how the virtual show house worked? Is it sent out in a email? How did the AD one, is it viewable? Where do I access it when I
Sure.
want to go back to it?
Yes, it is. The Iconic Home Show House is still available to view. You can visit architecturaldigest.com/iconic home. And it's really cool, because you'll see all of the floor plans, and you just click through each space. There was an audio tour that we were able to record so that you can really hear our points of view, just sound bites. And then there were clickable hot spots or hot points where you could actually learn more about the products that we specified throughout the space.
Awesome.
So it was so innovative. And, just like Courtney said, it's cool to be able to just shop without a budget in mind, because even when you're doing a show house, you have to be mindful of how much you're spending and who's going to give you access to resources.
Right.
But with the virtual show house, it's fair game, but it still requires, a significant amount of work. I really enjoyed it though. And it's funny to me how people ask, like, where's this house? Because they'll look at the show house and they can't believe that they're actually looking at a rendering. The boundary was really great in those 360 renderings. They still amaze me. I can't believe it when I look at it myself. But it was a phenomenal experience. And when we had the first step was that we had like a kickoff call. And the funny story is that as we're on this, I wasn't on this, I was on the Zoom, but not in the, I was in the car because my leathers from Italy for my show house arrived with water damage. And I had to, so I had to go to the workroom to see how bad they were. And as I'm driving back, I'm on the kickoff call, and I walked into my show house room. My wallpaper installer was installing my paper upside down. So I'm on the call talking about this virtual show house, and I'm literally like this, like, oh my God. I can't believe it cracks me up just thinking about that, the fact that I made it through that moment, but it was insane. But all in all, it all ended on both fronts. Both show houses turned out really great.
So Billy, for the for the 13 that you've had, that you've done, what would you do? Like, what do you know now about show houses that you wish you had known on the first time you did one? What do you know now that you wish you had known then?
Two things. A, how much it costs. B, and this is any person that I ever know that's doing a show house for the first time, this is my word of wisdom for them. To always have a money shot, especially now with social media, of this is the thing people are going to walk in and they're going to know that is the picture.
Oh, that's cool.
So many designers don't do that, and they complain. They're like, oh, somebody posted this on Instagram. It's a horrible picture of like the back of a chair. And it's like, no, you need to put practicality aside. And it's like, when you walk in that door, you need to see the magazine cover.
Yeah.
And people are like, that, oh, right, that's what I'm taking the picture of. They're not wandering around looking, oh, I don't know. That's really one thing that I learned earlier on.
Do you think about that in your projects? For your clients at all?
No, for a client project, that's very different. I mean, we'll rearrange the furniture if we have to for a photo shoot. But when you're not there or you're not engaged with every single person coming in, I just feel like it needs to be super, super obvious of this is it.
Yeah, I think that's super smart. Tiffany and Courtney, I think this is a good question. I'd love to hear from both of you all too. What do you know now that you wish you had known then?
Well, definitely the cost. Definitely the cost. And I think my first long distance renovation was a real challenge. And some of the things that I decided to do, like I did this custom marble mosaic for the bathroom, and it was like a giant puzzle, and it had to fit perfectly. Like there was literally no wiggle room.
Right.
And just making sure everything was, absolutely perfect long distance was a challenge. So I think I bit off more than I quite realized. Thankfully at the end it was spectacular. And every time I post that photos from that project, I mean, they're by far my most popular, photos on social, still from that first one. But yeah, I think those were the negatives that I didn't know. And I think the positives, again, like meeting the other designers and making friends with the other designers. I know that there can be some diva behavior in show houses, but I think if you go in with a positive, just that let's all succeed in this type of energy, I think you can make really wonderful relationships, and that's been one of the best things that's come out of it.
Awesome. Tiffany, what about you?
Yeah, I would agree. That is definitely the biggest takeaway, just the relationships and friendships that I've established by doing these show houses. And I know it's not by chance. I guess it's similar to what, Billy and Courtney are saying in terms of just the money aspect, just trying to plan ahead. But Show houses just don't come at the right time. I mean, it's always going to be when you're like really busy with clients, or so it's like, how can I really say, oh, plan ahead, have your design in advance, all of that goes out of the window. You're just really
Right.
winging it, so all I could say is, if you're committed, just stay the course and go big or go home. Like, I don't necessarily advocate for just basic show house spaces. I feel like it's a show house, and in addition to showing like your aesthetic, you should really think outside of the box and show something that's really innovative, so that you can have like those money shots. So if you're going to do it, it's really no way around it. You're going to spend money, so make it worthwhile.
Yeah, I think that's great advice too.
I also think I think a show house is also a great place to step outside your comfort zone too. The last one I did, I wanted to do something that had, much more of like a deep, a little more masculine kind of vibe, very much not like the aesthetic, that generally I'm known for. And, again, to be able to play with that and do it without the pressure of a client is very freeing. So I would also say, if you want to expand sort of your style or your aesthetic, a show house is a great way to do that as well.
I think that's great advice. Maybe try that one thing that you have never done before, see how it works, see how it respond. Well, guys, I think that about does it for me. I would love to invite you all of our readers and listeners to check out, old images of Kips Bays and to look at the virtual show houses that are still live and well on First Dibs and AD. And don't forget to follow along to these designers' really, really wonderful careers. And I hope that you all have a happy holidays. And thank you all for joining. We'll talk to you all soon. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.